you guys get? Find it, stuff.
I didn't get the other one. I didn't get the first page of the plan. So 2 pages, that, 2 pages. I did a color one, then my printer died.
Just came up. Not yet. Should perhaps email her and see if she was back to that point? That's better.
She's not feeling well, she might not even be thinking about doing it.
Not for guests.
No, I don't know what the guest is. Now it's just was Castlewood County. I'm sure we will change it here shortly. Well, so this is the side.
We're just looking as we can, so I just set the agenda. It should go like. I think we should call meeting in order.
You're the chairman, okay.
Let's call the meeting to order, starting with the pledge of allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so we don't have any minutes from the previous meeting we approved, so we move right on to the first item. So Dennis, I think you had suggested that we have this meeting to go over the last year's financial results and then to talk about the current status and also start the discussion on what we need to do with the budget process this year. So I'll hand it to you.
Yep. So, yeah, thanks, guys, for taking time to come. I know you've all expressed an interest in having a little more involvement in our budget process, and I'm certainly on board with that. The more help we have, what we can get done. So I thought it would be good to start this off with just a little review of where we ended up last year, and where we are currently. And you've got last year's figures there in front of you. Already, revenue wise, we did quite a bit better than we thought we would do. We projected $2,910,137, and we actually brought in $3,702,359. So we ended up with a surplus of $792,221. Or about 27% more than what we estimated. Parks and Rec did well this year. The state revenue was top. State revenue sharing ended up being a lot higher than we thought it would be. I'm always a little leery on state revenue sharing. We always get an estimate from them in the spring as to what they think it will be, but it is very economic dependent because it is a percentage of sales and income tax. And so in the economy sours throughout the year, the sales tax tends to do so, and so the income tax. And now we're up to a full 5% on that as of July 1st. So 5% of the state's sales and income tax come back through the municipalities. So we do expect more in that this year than last year, which is why we upped that a little bit. But I still tend to stay about 25% below what they projected, just in case. Miscellaneous revenue, that was a lot of that was actually building permits that we picked up extra on. The CEO budget, which is where all the building permits and all those type of things, he's almost at 60% of his revenue for the year already. And we're only 22% into the budget year. So, you know, building is still happening at a fairly rapid pace. We just got a nice check today from the senior center for the planning board fees. You know, at some point we should probably expect that that's going to start to slow down a little bit. EMS was up slightly this year. This is after our contractual write-offs and bad debt. So, you know, they did bring in considerably more money than that, but there's funds that's always in there that people that don't have insurance are just not going to collect it. Even though we do send it out to a collection agency, we usually get a very small percentage of it. Transfer station did pretty well this year. Cardboard and metal in particular were a good return this year. That we were paying pretty decent money for that stuff. Charges for services didn't quite make what we thought, which in this instance actually isn't a bad thing, because that's where all our lien fees and tax interest go into, which means we didn't really file as many tax liens as we thought we were going to have to file, because people pay their taxes. So that's actually a good thing to see that one down a little bit. You know, senior center just killed it this year. After COVID, they really wanted to get together and do this thing. We did. Airport was up. Airport will be up considerably, I hope, starting in December when the solar project actually goes online. I drove out there a couple of weeks ago, and it looks to me like they're a little behind on time frame. So we'll see where that ends up. And Waterfront did a lot.
That goes under their budget, the income from airport.
Yeah. Any revenue that's generated by the airport has to stay within the airport. So hopefully we'll get
Doesn't the town own the airport?
it does, but because of all of our grants and all the grant assurances that we have to do out there, any revenue that's generated on the airport has to stay within the airport. So if we get it to a point where it's actually breaking even or actually making money, which I think this year would probably be break even, we'll probably have to look at breaking it off as an enterprise fund so that we're not mingling the funds in the town's other funds.
So Dennis, on the airport, we've got some questions on it. This is one where there has to be some confusion. I think there was when you first were involved, certainly when I was involved, and had some questions about how the airport works. These numbers don't include the fuel.
Yes, correct. They do.
They do.
They would do.
So, because I think one of the confusions was when we do the appropriation on the ballot every year, that's just an appropriation of what they're budgeted to spend.
Correct.
It sometimes was interpreted as a deficit. And I think what you had sent me, that showed the combination of the budgeted amount for operations plus the fuel was a lot more positive than the amount that we were being asked to appropriate on the ballot.
Was it fuel or was it property tax?
It was property, there's some property tax. that gets paid. So the fuel is in the budget. Okay? When we put out the revenue, the fuel is in, there, even though we don't account, so right now they're only like 8% of their revenue. Because we don't account for fuel till very
At the end of the year.
so that's
So when you eyeball it, it looks like it's not there, so it's a much bigger number.
well, and the budget was much bigger this year because we carried over some funds because we had some repair stuff. To do. So their budget this year, I remember it was like 103,000, and they brought in 85 or almost 86. But it was originally 103, so it was originally 83 because we carried over 20. I can't remember if it was 22 or 24. So it would have been pretty close if we hadn't had to carry some of that over. The solar project should finally get back into at least a break-even situation. If not more, since the runway has been redone, the demand for hangars is, we've had several people call on the hangars. And that's all more revenue for the airport.
Yeah, I not to jump too far ahead, I want to get you through the rest of your kind of review here, but this is, at least for me, one of the maybe two areas I think would be useful to get the management team from the airport to come in and do a review early in the year this year, because I don't understand it fully, and I know other people don't as well, and to the extent that we understand how it works and all, well, the puts and takes are like we did in some of those other areas last year, then there's no objections to get around at the end of the
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
I don't know what the right timing is to do that, but you know, if we could do it early in the year and knock it out, I think that'd be really good stuff.
Okay, well, we can have a discussion later on schedule for what we should do for budget this year. Anyways, I'd like to get it a little earlier than we did last year. We kind of get down the wire. I'm getting it done. Anyways. Yeah, and so waterfront is also up this year. Part of that was just having a harbor master that was down there actually collecting fees. They're running ahead on their budget already this year. They're at like 36% of the revenue now. And we're just at, like 22% of the budget. So, and that is a reflection of Larry collecting those fees for moorings, people tying up and blah.
So he had to be down there, correct? Hire somebody else.
No, Ray Stoll had done it for a long time. Ray was very difficult to get a hold of. People would tie up, they'd call Ray's cell phone, Ray never called him back. We couldn't get a hold of Ray. There wasn't anybody doing it. So when Ray decided to resign, the police chief to me was the most logical choice because he's already a certified harbor master. He did it when he was out on Violent. So I just asked him if he was interested in taking it on. And he has, and he's done a great job. Things are running up better now. So that's where we're at on the revenue side.
So what about property taxes? Why don't you list property taxes as income?
I guess we could, but I mean, we set the rate and this comes out of the property taxes, deducted from the property taxes, so you already know what your taxes are going to be.
Right.
I mean, we can add it if that's.
Yeah, all I'm saying is, if you added this, you'd end up with 11 million or whatever. Right, I would assume.
Yes,
Just the difference between.
yes, the projected revenue,
That's right.
and the difference between the budget, yes. Yeah. On the spending side, we underspent the budget by almost 5.6%, or almost $700,000. Everybody came within budget except for Parks and Rec. And that was mostly the result of a whole lot of demand that we just didn't anticipate up there. Particularly for the summer camps that they run, with the lack of daycare in the area because of the pandemic. A lot of people relied on those summer camps as kind of de facto daycare, and they had way more children go through those programs up there than they do normally. So that increases labor costs, increase the program costs for, t-shirts and things that they need to run the summer camps. It increased the fuel a little bit because we ended up having to, if we took them to the beach or whatever we did, instead of having one bus, we had to run 2 buses. So we ended up with an increase in fuel costs, and we just ended up with an increase in heating oil and other fuels as well because of the price spike this year, and the huge increase in electricity. So, we used 2.9% on the budget, but it was 31, almost 32% over on his revenue. So in terms of tax dollars, it would have cost the taxpayers $417,111, and instead it's costing them $312,594 after the deficit. So even though we're over budget, it still costs the taxpayer less to run the community center up there this year. A little concerned about this year's budget already, with electricity costs and heating oil costs. Are just, we cannot lock in our heating oil this year. They just will not do it. Volatility in the markets. Certainly we don't pay retail price, but heating oil levels are very low in the Northeast right now, which will probably translate into high heating bills again as one of the people. So it is an area of concern, and I don't really want to see this budget over budget next year.
Dennis, I mean, not to interrupt, but this was the other one that I was hoping we could do a review before we get too far into the year. Because as you just pointed out, when we exited last year, we were anticipating an excess of $400,000 deficit to run it, and that's been shrunk down to 312, still a large chunk. I think it's generally thought of as a tremendous asset. Obviously, it's getting heavily utilized, but I think the number of people on the last budget committee and 1 or 2 people on the select board had kind of said, look, we ought to take a deeper dive into this at some point. Maybe the select board is already doing that, but I think it'd be helpful to me, certainly, and I'm sure other people on the budget committee, to understand maybe at a click down, maybe not at a kind of a line item department P&L type level, but where we're spending the money other than, the swimming pool and fuel costs. I mean, is everything we're doing, being utilized at the same level? Are we charging user fees that was raised as an issue last year? Are we up to market? Should we be up to market? How do you close some of that gap? Because 300 grand is still a big number. And if we miss that budget in some year, it's a bigger number than that. So I think that would be my 2 with the airports, because it's confusion about it. And there's apparently a lot of good things happening, and then it was presented to me, we're breaking even, but it didn't look like it before it was presented. In this one, we're not close to breaking even.
Well, and if anybody's lived in town long enough, when the community center was built, it was projected that it would pay for itself, that it wouldn't actually not cost the taxpayers anything. That's never happened since the place has been built. It's never happened. This is probably the closest that it's ever come. This is the best revenue year we've ever had. It's a great revenue. And we've added, we've added some, we have to, there's an increase in the use of some of the programs up there, but we're also brought in extra revenue this year by renting some of the facility out, outside things, outside activities, stuff like that. As far as the charging goes, this has been a conversation that's happened every year since I've been here. They don't want to up their fees to the same level that the YMCA, for instance, is charging. And I don't know if I actually ever understood that argument all that well myself either. I don't set fees as up to somebody else to do. But it certainly is a conversation that I think is well worth having. Good.
I agree with Tom, because there have been roofing costs, and there have been the lockers.
Oh, yeah, so money has come out of the capital
Lockers
fund in
with,
other
like,
years, to maintain that place, that's not part of this, not in the operating budget, so.
Right,
you know,
but people were renting lockers and how much, and if you bought new lockers, should you not go up on the fee to then, you know, correlate the difference in the new lockers, because it's becoming on the townspeople and the town staff.
And there were some notions last year, things they wanted to expand beyond the level of services, and they get involved in supporting some of the functions around town. I mean, I don't want to be, as the budget committee, I don't think we have the remit to be able to do the operations of the community center, but from a budget standpoint, it would be useful to know if we're looking at a gap next year, if we will, which always happen. Why? That's what I want to understand.
And what can they do about it? If anything.
Well, I can tell you right now, that pool was one expensive. Thing to have up there, the heat, the water, the labor, you know, it doesn't make any money, I think, without even pulling figures to tell you that.
Did we like talk about like how to, with Dwayne, how to attract other people from other towns to utilize the facility and maybe offset some?
Well, they did that through their town partnership program, where Alner, Dresden, and Blackpool Island all pay. The towns kick in a little bit towards the community center, and then they get the same rate that a regular town person would get here in Wisconsin. If they join the community center, so, you know, we are pulling in some people from other areas. During COVID, we were bringing, there was actually people coming from Gardner, and even further away to use the pool. To make a point, the pool,
Don?
I think, and once again, when you get further down the line on this, I think it'd be very helpful to be able to see what adult rates are, what student rates are, what kids' rates are.
Yeah,
I'm sure,
I mean,
it's
that's
I'm sure it's broken down somewhere.
you can look it up, the rates are all online on the website.
Well, no, I'm talking about the overall revenue. When we see how many adults are actually paying, how many kids are actually paying, how many kids in a program are paying. And the reason I say that is I belong to the Y as well as this. And the Y is 3 times what this costs. Okay, we don't have to go up 3 times what this costs, what we're charging here. But what would happen if we went up, and we could see this if we had those figures? What would happen if we bumped these categories up a little bit? Adult categories could afford it more than kids categories perhaps. And what kind of return will we see on the revenue stream at that point? Just a suggestion on that.
Another drain is the Silver Sneakers, which I'm a member of, but I feel guilty that I'm not paying anything.
Well, we do the revenue.
Yeah, but it's less than what.
It is a lot less.
Yeah.
It's like your insurance, you know, it's like a doctor taking insurance, you know, you're gonna take Blue Cross Blue Shield, this is what you're charging, but this is what you're actually
Yeah, I know.
going to accept. And that's the same with us with EMS, I mean, we charge enough in the run of a year to make EMS break even or close to break even. But by the time we get done with all the contractual write-offs that we have in insurance companies, it just doesn't happen. Especially Medicare, because 65% of our patients are Medicare, and you take whatever Medicare is giving you, and you like it, and that's all you can do about it. You're not allowed to go chase the patient, it's different, so. That's, and they haven't upped their rates in 20 years. So, you know, there are some areas that we just can't do that much with. Certainly, this isn't one of them.
If. So, the revenue is limited, and we need to really calculate our costs. Now, you're saying that coal is the biggest energy hog out there, is that oil fired? What's the cost of converting it to,
Well, I have an engineer that's doing a study on that right now. As to what the alternatives could be, not only for up there, but for this building as well. Because this building's boiler system is 30 years old. And we went through a lot of oil last winter.
Yeah.
And we went through a lot of repairs just because the system is old. But what do I replace it with? Do I replace it with oil? Do we replace it with propane? Do we do heat pumps? I'm not qualified to make those decisions.
right?
Stay up there. Is there an alternative for heating that pool? Do we put solar panels up on the roof to help provide?
That is one way of helping. I saved a bundle by swapping from oil to propane. And I can lock in a price for this year.
There. So I actually have, I have an HVAC engineer that's doing those studies, right now, we got. Another family member got COVID last week, so it's been delayed by a week, but I expected to have those. Studies back, last Thursday, but now it looks like it'll be this Thursday. So we are looking at all the alternatives as to what we can do to save money. One of them being is street lines. We can save considerable amount of money, we just do it and figure out which one it is, so.
And I believe, Dwayne said that they're putting heat pumps in the front of the building. The office and the senior center.
We're just not sure that heat pumps are just the right way to go with these larger buildings. If they're gonna be able to handle what's there. If the guy tells me yes, then that's great, but that's what we'll do, we'll put the heat pumps in, but. I don't know the answer to that, I'm not an HVAC engineer, I just don't know those things, so that's why I have something else.
But that could possibly be a big capital item that we're looking at.
Well, we already budgeted for this building for HVAC system already this year. That was just over 300,000. I'm not even sure that's gonna cover it with prices gone through the roof. And there was money in the budget for them stuff up there this year as well. Because their air conditioning cracked up right in the middle of summer in August. Pretty the worst weather to have it done. Because the system is old, and again, that's money that's coming out of the capital budget, that's not part of this. And really, the fact that the Parks and Rec department is the largest budget in this town, it's a big red flag. Should be having people look up and say, yeah, that's more than our wastewater treatment.
So I don't know if you had any other observations on these numbers. Those were, I don't know if other people have requests, those were my two things, airport and Parks and Rec. I don't know if there are other things that we want to put, or get an early look at, so we're all educated. I don't know if there are ones to do on that.
I've always felt like those were the two big ones that I would like to break down.
So as part of, as part of the ordinance, we have to meet again by December anyways.
Is it by December or is it like the first week or something?
I heard it say something like by December, I think it's by December 15th, I think it says. And, we can have another meeting then, and we can, that will be another meeting like this, just to go over where we're at financially at that point in the year. That would probably be my suggestion, is to have those two people come and do their presentations then, before we start getting into the actual budget process in January, February.
So I'll make that request to you and we'll get it on the agenda for early December.
Second. Second.
That's fine.
Cool. So what are the plans for the excess income that we had?
So excess income and, which amounts to between the underspent budget and the excess revenue of $1.4 million, will lapse into the town's undesignated fund balance. Having said that, so the select board is authorized to carry over unexpended funds from last year to this year. And I am working on a list of requests for them for their October 4th meeting, to carry some of this over. We're still under pretty hard wage pressures right now as a town. Waldeboro just up their paramedic pay to $30 an hour, which means the other services in the area will follow suit pretty quickly, which will put us under a lot of strain because we're paying 24. And people will take a little less to work in certain places, but they're not going to accept this $6 or $7 an hour difference in pay. So, we're probably going to have to do something else there.
What are we paying our paramedics now?
Well, they went to $30 an hour for the department as well, right across the board.
Yep.
And I already got a call today from Dan Scott as town manager asking what we were doing with that police department, because now they're getting some pressure on there. So anyways, that's why my sheet is a little bigger than yours, because I got columns over here that I kept going on. figuring out what I gotta do to carry overs, and what we think is gonna happen.
The
So,
prices of everything going. Or-
well, and again, I'm concerned about fuel prices this winter, so.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to build a little cushion in here to make sure. That we can carry it. If we don't spend it, great, we'll fund balance next year instead of this year.
So yesterday, the price of fuel oil was $4.60 a gallon. I know the town will get less, but that's for the rest of us to pay. To
And
fill up
I
the
don't
tank
think-
for the winter.
I don't foresee that going down.
No, I don't either. Nothing is going down, it's going up.
And same here, same like EMS supplies, the cost is just keeps, every week is Aaron's in my office, this one up and that one up, it's like, where does it end? Because, at some point, there's gonna be a breaking point here. And it's gotta happen, but when, I don't know, so. Anyways, that's last year.
Any questions, comments, requests?
Right now, we're at 22% of our budget year. We're at 19% of our budget spent, bearing in mind that there are a lot of one-time upfront expenses that we take care of right off the first of the fiscal year, so. We should catch up with that. Everybody's revenue is right where it should be so far. So things are on track for at least the first quarter anyways. Hopefully the economy doesn't tank over the winter.
Okay, so one question, what's the projection for capital expenditures?
I haven't gotten to that as of yet. When I finished up last year's, I don't remember what it was, and I didn't, if I was on my desktop, I could tell you that. I can give you that. If you-
You know what percentage has already been spent from last year?
Well, we bonded everything, so. We bonded most everything. Which is $1.265 million. We took 400,000, was it 400,000? Was 125, was 40. Was 165. Yeah, it was 400,000 we took out for two public works trucks and a new ambulance. The ambulance hasn't been, that's 2 years out, that money is gonna sit there until. We get there, the two public works trucks have already been bought, and then of course the money for the harbor didn't go through, so that didn't come out either.
Oh, that would have come out of the capital?
Yes. And then the rest of it, the furnace, community center, sewer, something gardens. It seems like there was something else. We actually took out a bond for it.
I don't know, is it to say, but there was something on the order of $2 million over the next subsequent 2 years that was projected, but it was it was an incomplete projection. So there was a significant amount over 23 and 24 still to be done. Is that roughly a magnitude?
Yeah, I think that's where we were at. What we tried to get is particularly this bond this year as we could. And it's a good thing, because we did get things also done.
Yeah, I think when we did the final budget review, and all of them was clear in my head, it was like 1.8. If it included that Harvard project, that got voted down. So then we had the numbers that he just described. And there's a spreadsheet with, okay, this truck needs to be done and the transfer, that kind of stuff. Long list of things for the next 2 years and total up to about 2 million. Now, when you do all that, whether that's also current at that point in time, whether there's new stuff, that we will, I guess we'll find out when we get into the spring. Is that fair to say, guys?
Yeah. So equipment wise, we're probably in the best shape we've been in for quite a while. Public works, I don't think we need a new truck now for 2 or 3 years. Cruisers, we're good. The ambulance is all set. We're at least 10 years on having to replace even one of those. And now we can start looking at, this building, which needs to be, the HVAC system upgraded, which we've done only for this year. The clock tower needs to get done. This is one of those things that has been kicked down the road for so many years. It's going to be part of my carryover request this year, because the gentleman that owns the building has put a considerable amount of money in that building this year. It's painted it and it looks nice, and he does not want that steeple up there looking like crap, which is what it looks like right now. So as part of my carryover request going to the selectmen this year is at least the money to get it painted. So it looks halfway decent, because he wants to get it done, and we are responsible for getting it done. It's, I don't know if you're all familiar with the clock and how all that comes about.
How did that come about?
It's something that should have never been agreed to, but back to what 1950.
Oh, God, that was almost before God.
When it was a VFW hall, and they donated the clock in it to the town. Except they didn't give us the steeple,
Someone's really thinking.
so we own the clock, but we don't own the apparatus, the infrastructure that it's in. But we're responsible for maintaining it. So, you know,
Clock makers out there.
the guy's name is Rick Ricardo. He's a really nice guy. And actually is doing the town a big favor, because he was up there every month and he oils it, takes care of it, and makes sure that it's safe. But that's part of his building. And, you know, and we can't just sit here and ignore it and say, we're not gonna paint it, we're not gonna take care of it. I already had to pay to fix a leak in it last year. So it's something that just needs to get done, and the town is just, it's one of those things that just keep punting it, because it's not cheap, just to paint it is $40,000. And that's just painting the steeple, that's not taking care of the clock, or replacing the windows that need to be replaced. And looking at some of John O'Connell's notes, when he was trying to deal with this, they actually were talking about removing the steeple completely to paint it and do all the work and then put it back up again. Either way, it's gonna be really fun. So.
Such a pretty clock though, when you come into this.
Well, and it is, it's one of the more prominent features. And that's in perpetuity, where we got it.
I've seen some churches, take their steeple down. Put bells in and stuff, put them back up with fiberglass towers instead of wood and everything else.
That's not gonna happen here.
No.
I'll change subject, but, did we get a report on the water treatment facility?
What now?
The water treatment facility,
Oh, so. They're this big.
what do they recommend, what's the conclusion?
Well, the conclusion from, Allbird was that we could actually put a seawall around that and leave it there. And not move it. I can tell from the comments we get from DEP, they don't like it. Now, they can't force us to move it,
Well, that's good to know.
but they can make it very difficult for us if we don't.
They might like to-
But those discussions are very preliminary. We've sent them the reports. They sent back last week a whole bunch of kind of nitpicky questions, I think. Not even knowing that much about running the wastewater facility. But I think Allbirds, you know, that would cost somewhere in the neighborhood of $7 million versus moving it, which would cost somewhere between $37 and $44 million. And then if we move it, where are we moving it to? That's the other big question. So, but we're going to try to, I think, try and push them, just put a seawall around it, where it is. But there's a lot of infrastructure improvements that can be made. There's a lot of pump stations that are in bad condition. A lot of manholes that are in bad condition. There's a lot of work to be done. And, you know, we're working through, once we get through this process with the DEP, then we can start working on figuring out where we're going to get the money to do it. So there's money out there, it's just, you know, the town, put money for all this. But we gotta figure out what we're doing first before we can do all the trying to get the started. You're welcome to come in and read it, and we should report you want.
I read the phone once. It's twice as thick.
Yeah, they're pretty extensive, so. You know, that's, you know, this is gonna be a multi-year project. If we move it,
Any other questions on last year, this year? Or we move on to streetlights? Streetlights, okay. I think we've all received this. I don't know if I can speak for everybody in saying I didn't fully understand it. You know, it might be useful to get some background. I think there was some activity with the previous town manager. And it was stable for a while, so we just give a quick look at the intent.
So several years ago, actually, the county did a countywide RFP on this to get various towns together. And, you know, try to get that price by having 6 or 8 towns do it, which has it. One of the reasons we did not into that, we didn't go along with it. And Kathy, remember, I don't know why, but
I don't know what, I didn't remember being on the board when that happened.
Yeah, well, and
I don't.
in looking at some of John's notes, it looked like John actually wanted to go with the CMP proposal. Because there was no upfront cost, they would do all of the conversion themselves. But if you go to the CMP proposal, you're still paying to rent the arms and, you know, all the fixtures that go along with it, as opposed to one of the other two where you're just buying them outright. You control what they do with them, so. I was hoping, I didn't really delve into this a whole lot, I was hoping, yeah.
Yeah, I read them. Again, I don't know that I fully understood them. I suppose let the other folks comment on what they saw here.
Yeah.
I had a little difficulty doing an apples to apples because some of the baselines in the proposal were not the same. At least I couldn't determine, it. I didn't try to build a spreadsheet for it or anything. But the cost that, our current cost, annual cost in the CMP proposal was different than the current annual cost in the real term proposal. And that just is probably, I assume that's just a function of, you know, the other vendors maybe just guessing at what our costs are. So it's difficult to kind of say, you know, what's really apples to apples here. And I had a few other observations, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I think they had the same number of lights, but
And the Affinity did not, they will not maintain the lights, so then we have to figure out, well, what would that cost us to maintain?
Well, and we can't do it.
Right.
You know, our public works department's not, we don't have electricians, we don't have food truck. You know, we're not gonna be able to do the maintenance on these ourselves. The real term proposal does include a maintenance contract, like what, 6,000 a year, but get to 900 or something like that. The Infinity proposal did not, but they would do one. If we asked them.
Okay, that was.
Yeah, I was looking at the state bet would be for CMP. The state bet would be CMP. We're not gonna make as much money on it, but we know they'll handle just about everything. Okay. I was looking at Affinity, they got a 10-year warranty, limited warranty. And first year is the only one that's covered, that covers labor. So after that, you're buying $175 an hour service on that, okay? Real term, I didn't see anything about the warranty in here. I don't know if it's copy, I didn't see anything where it says warranty whatsoever. You know, what good is it, how long, whatever, okay? You said they had a contract, service contract on it. But again, I think my copy said call for whatever, contract or warranty. So that leaves me in the dark and what's it cost us after the fact.
I think at this stage, we don't have all the information, but
Yeah.
that would be a very good question.
But with Xfinity and stuff, I mean, their limited warranty is, they go back and say, well, if it was CMP's fault, now you're paying us, you know. Before you call us in to look what's wrong with that street light, you gotta make sure it's our lamp that's bad.
Yes.
So warranty on in real term is 10 years.
10 years, okay, yeah. Limited?
Yes.
So those are things that will smack you in the sheets later on, you know.
Certainly, those are things to negotiate out.
And again, if we're releasing everything from CMP, we know probably what our costs are gonna be other than rate increases, you know. But looking at the town.
difference between the two.
Sorry?
You have to look at the difference between the two.
Yeah,
They're gonna be paying CMP forever.
well, yeah, but it's a state bet, we'll still make money on the deal. We could be paying these guys, some of them say you gotta buy a stock of these lamps they have here. And then maybe have your people put them in, or their people put them in, or our people put them in.
Their people, I mean, he said that the other company was have.
One would do it, one won't. You have to get.
When we say you would get a contractor, if we would.
Right.
If you want to
They,
go-
they would do a service contract with us. I don't know how much it would
What
cost.
was that, real?
Or,
The Infinity.
Okay, well, okay. Yeah, those are the things we need to know, and what does it cover?
Well, I had a question, Dennis, and, because the other two proposals require that we buy the equipment from CMP that's currently there, correct? And the letters that you would attach in this, to the CMP proposal, there were a couple of emails from whoever the point of contact is, indicated that the total amount was like $10,000 or something.
Right, they go by what they call book market value.
I was actually surprised that that was as low as that, and I was wondering if it was the complete picture. There's a big question. I was very impressed with the real-time proposal in particular, but, you know, whether it's that one or the other, private company, in either of those two cases, you gotta buy the equipment from CMP, correct?
Correct.
And I just want to clarify that we knew what that number would be. And we probably don't know for sure. And there was an estimate there. I didn't print out the entire image. But
There it
it's
is.
done, there's not, you know,
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like 10 grand.
So, yeah. But I don't think that's not an estimate, that's what it is.
Okay, that's what it actually is.
Yeah, yeah.
Because if I remember, the CMP, the cost after the project is completed was something like $30,000, and the annual cost after, and the real term was like $8,800. That's a big number. I mean, it's a big difference.
It is a big
Big
difference.
difference.
I agree with you.
And I think you have to read between the lines and some of the other stuff. I poured through all of that.
and what-
And in my mind, I kind of went with CMP only because I think they were more forthright, at least their explanations made sense. I don't know, to me, not that I'm an electrician or anything else, but
Yeah, but there's a lot of towns that have already changed to that. So that gives me some confidence in going the other way. Plus the payback is a lot faster. Basically, you're investing, having your own lights. Not to mention, myself and Leslie did a survey about 4 or 5 years ago, where 50% of the lights aren't needed.
And that will be part of either one of these two.
Yeah, they proposed that they were part of their contract and still assess what we actually need. And CMP is not about it. Yeah, CMP is not about to turn them off. I mean, there's two down Willow Lane that are not needed.
There's one right outside my bedroom windows.
I like the cave right here. Told you all the towns have been done. That's a wealth of information sitting there. Do they like it? Unexpected costs? What's going on? You know?
Well, the few towns that I did talk with, most of them are still fairly early on into it, so they're not running into light failures and they're not doing any, having any issues with them, so they're happy with it. But I think from what I can tell, that most towns have opted to buy their own, not go the route of something like power. There are a few of the smaller towns that did. But you know, those smaller towns just really aren't gonna realize the big savings that we can realize because of the amount of lights that we actually have. And this includes lights out at the airport.
See, when I was selling, so when I was selling service and stuff, it was on a company here. You know, I realized they, well, go with us because hey, because we, none of this. Okay, it's your problem. If the light's not working, it's your problem, it's this. Here, you could get into one of these situations. Well, CMP's gonna lose water somewhere on the line down there, who knows? But, you know, that's one thing you look at is the danger here. Boy, there's a lot of payback here, a lot better than this right now, so it's a gamble.
And that's why I wanted you guys to look at it, because I could very easily look at it and say, you know, I think this is the way we should go. Not, it is a gamble, the way to do it. We got plenty of streetlights out in town right now that we just can't seem to get something any kind of fix. They're like everybody else, they don't have enough help. And they just don't prioritize this stuff. So then you're back to, you know, we're relying on supplemental power to do all of the work. And I go back and forth on this because they don't really plan on using the ARPA funds for these, and that's, we certainly spend those funds elsewhere. Besides spending them on streetlights. But, you know, the payback is bigger. And if you go with the smart technology, we can actually control them. We can control how bright they are, we can control them if they go on, if they don't. And if you go with subject matters, you said they're not.
Yeah.
Did you get a sense from those towns and the few you talked to that did not tend to go with CFP, why they bought their?
Yeah, I think most of them are just, you know, look at the payback on it and say, hey, you know, we have control, we get a better, you know, it's a bigger return on the money most of the time.
So I don't know what exactly would be useful for us to do to kind of bring this to. But I was thinking we probably need a simple table of, you know, what are the factors, you know, what are the variables? And fill in the blanks on what these proposals say and question marks where we don't know the answer. And I mean, because some of this is obvious, but some of it, you know, needs to be presented to the town and the select board. What would be useful? Would that be useful? Or are you looking for something else?
I was just looking for a direction to take this.
I think I'd like to, I think I'd like to know what the maintenance cost is gonna cost, not just all a number. Like, what is it gonna cost us? And what is this contract? How long is that gonna be for? I think that those are important things to know.
Well, I think the maintenance contract was for the life would yearly for however long. We contract with them, so.
Right, so I think those contracts are like important to us to be able to say, okay, well, you have a contract for this long and it's gonna cost this much versus. Another company, whether it be CNP or. Make a good informed decision about what's it gonna cost
Well,
us.
it's fun, it's a gamble either way you do it.
Oh, service contracts, I saw them too. And the devil's in the details. And do they live up to their expectations?
Well, and so, you know, we bought the fire truck, the tanker truck, that was the other one that was on. Capital was the tanker truck. They bought that tanker truck back in '98 with a lifetime warranty on the tank. And the company went out of business. And there's nobody to repair the tank, so we have to replace the thing. What happens when the service contractor goes out of business? So the company itself goes out of business. Central Maine Power is not going out of business. Somebody's gonna take that over. And somebody's gonna be there and make sure that those light switches are on. So, you know. Again, it's a gamble.
Okay, well, look, there's a couple of ways that we can proceed then. We can have a, you know, further review, do our own analysis. You know, any kind of a vote that we took, I don't think would be anything but, you know, an advisory view that we would give you.
That's all.
We can prepare a table, whatever you want, whatever is helpful to you.
Yeah.
Let's fit in our wheels.
So what other information would you guys like to have on this? You know, we'd like to have the cost and the affinity for, the contract.
Yeah, I'd like to see both contracts. Let's see what they promise you. At what cost.
Once we get that, we'll put that on the spreadsheet to compare apples with apples. What's your time frame on this? Dennis? I'm sorry.
I mean, there's not a huge, there's no big rush on it. I mean, ARPA funds don't have to be spent until 2026. The only rush on it would be, you know, let's get the savings into the budget, but there's no dropped in.
So these are subject to an increase then,
I
we don't act fast.
everything is. I mean, most everything that I've seen come through right now says, if you don't sign this within 15 to 30 days, you're gonna have to reprice it. Because of the cost of stuff, and then I talked about the pump out anyways, because I know that's also needs to be repriced.
Well, why don't we take another beat at this and collect that information? Are there copies of the actual contract, the actual negotiating from that we could get or that they've given us?
So the service contract,
Yeah.
I don't
These are kind
have,
of market.
yes, I don't have them, but I can ask.
I think that'll be useful, and pair through that, come back with at least an initial recommendation, and we can do that before we have a December discussion. Does that make sense? Good. Are there any other questions, comments, issues before we?
So could we meet in a month?
do the motion?
take a look at what we get in and decide on.
Yeah, we probably need, Marty's gonna push the streetlights because he's been doing it for a long time.
Well, I haven't done anything. for-
No, but it needs to be done. Push and start with the project.
Okay.
If you get those, if you get copies of those contracts, you can just email those out.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we can work with those at home.
Yeah, and if you want stuff in a spreadsheet to help. Make, apples comparison.
Well, that's what we're gonna end up doing, so.
We're
trying to help.
I'm trying, that's why I shut this. You guys wanna help, yeah, you can help with this.
I'm sure you do enough data research as it is. You probably got a pile of it in there to do.
Oh, you see that's.
I'd like to see the wording of the contract.
Good. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.